The Sony PlayStation 2. Literally my entire childhood. If I could figure out how many hours I have clocked in on this thing, I'd probably vomit. But this time of year, I get all giddy with nostalgia. Video games were always such a big part of Christmas for me growing up, and as a result, I always get the urge to go through and play some of the stuff I grew up on. But instead of playing the good games, I think maybe it's time we evaluate this console for what it truly is, instead of those rose-tinted memories, and play through some of the worst games ever made for the console. About 5 or 6 months ago, I made a video on the worst Wii games ever made, but little did I know at the time, I started a quest to find the worst game ever made, console by console, until we have a definitive answer. But to me, intentionally bad games aren't really all that fun. For a game to be truly awful, it needs someone to have at least tried to make it decent or make some money, and I only really enjoy making fun of games that someone poured their heart and soul into. And today we're looking at those games for the PS2. Now, compared to most other consoles, the PS2 actually had a pretty good run. Compared to the Wii, the average rating of the games on here is considerably higher, and I didn't want to kill myself quite as often. But the bad games on here, they are terrible. It's practically a torture method at this point. We have games with a score of 8 out of 100, games that didn't even get reviews from major outlets, and games that at a base level don't even work. So strap on your seatbelts and get ready to watch me play the worst PS2 games ever made. The year was 2001, the same year as never mind. And in the late 90s and early 2000s, we saw a trend that I often forget about, probably on account of the fact that I wasn't born yet. This era saw the boom of skateboarding being integrated into mainstream culture, spearheaded of course by Tony Hank. And as a result, Tony Hank got his own video game series, Tony Hank's Pro Skater 1, 2, and 3, which by the way has a 97 on Metacritic, making it the 7th highest rated game of all time, which is just wild. I don't know whose dick he sucked to get that spot, but I mean, to be fair, I never played it. My only experience with skateboarding and gaming are those levels in Spyro 3. But regardless of what you think of the Tony Hawk franchise, it only made sense for contenders to appear, and rather quickly, leading to the Simpsons Skateboarding clocking in a score of 38 on Metacritic. Now, the Simpsons definitely have a unique history when it comes to video games. The wiki lists 27 entries in a 35-year span, making it one of the most shamelessly licensed series of all time. They took advertisements for KFC, Church's Chickens, and the Toyota Corolla of all things. And in my personal favorite, a French version of Tide.
Tout, mais marge, de quoi que tu causes, les pires.
But back to the topic of games, there were a ton of these made, and as you can probably guess, most of them are total and complete horseshit. I can vividly remember playing a copy of The Simpsons Wrestling back on PS1, and even then as a kid thinking, man, this is terrible. And then for some reason out of nowhere, The Simpsons Hit and Run got made, legitimately one of the best PS2 games ever made. But somewhere in between those two games, they decided to take The Simpsons and adapt it into a Tony Hawk game, which makes a lot of sense, it really does. You have Bart, an absolutely iconic character who skates everywhere. It's a big trend at the time, you want to make a lot of money, I get it, I really do. But the budget for this game must have been like $6 in a used napkin because, Jesus Christ. This game got absolutely grilled by critics for 2 reasons. Number 1, compared to other games of this type, the controls feel somewhat similar to Pro Skater 3 if you were actively overdosing on horse tranquilizer. And secondly, in a game about The Simpsons, a show solely dedicated to comedy, there is a stunningly low amount of jokes to be found. But let's start with the former, the controls. The controls are on the verge of tolerable and unplayable. A lot of the basics are super intuitive. X does an ollie, and also allows you to get a little bit of airtime when needed. But when just cross-referencing the two games, there's a couple of massive differences. The first being that this game does potentially the worst job teaching you how to play I think I've ever seen. This is their idea of a tutorial, just an input list like a fighting game. However, they fail to inform you that this is something that can only be done off a ramp like so. But just properly turning around on the ramp requires you to hold back, something that the game also didn't tell me. From everything I can see, the game completely banks on you having had played another skating game before this one, because if you had, you'd know a nose grab is most often done from this position. But someone like me had no fucking clue. The game never explains the combo system, timing, anything. And even outside of all of that, the levels are some of the most depressing things I've ever seen. But before you get into any of those, the first thing you get to do is choose your character, each of them having very different stats and 2 unique voice lines. But something you'll definitely pick up on through this video is that when it comes to bad games, the writing is on the walls. You know, if the game's menu is terrible or the sound effects are just blatantly ripped, you know you are in for an absolute treat. And speaking of, just look at this character selection screen. What in the fuck made someone think that this is the best lighting for this situation? I didn't realize I was playing some sort of horror game. Not only do these 3D models look like some serious Uncanny Valley shit, but again, what's with the dim fluorescent light? Alright, let me paint a picture for you. You get off of work, it was a long, hard day. You turn a corner into an alley, and this is what stands in front of you, rope in hand. But back to gameplay, I guess. First and foremost, you'll probably immediately notice that Springfield is just laid out blatantly wrong. Mose is literally 2 feet away from the school and the power plant is right around the corner. Nothing makes any sense. And even more funny to me, the Simpsons Hit and Run just a year later completely scrapped this town layout and remade it from the ground up, ignoring this. I decided to pick up a copy of Skate 3 just to cross-reference the games a little bit, and the level of design is on an entirely different level, allowing you to experiment with combos, where here it's just super mundane. Now the Simpsons games have always been kind of dry in terms of gameplay, but they make up for it with their personality and charm. Hell, I'd even argue that with the Simpsons Hit and Run. However, here the characters only have 2 voice lines, I shit you not, including the announcer. Anytime you fail something, you get 1 of 2 lines over and over and over.
Late shove at 360.
Literally any time you fail a trick, which in a game like this, with controls like this, is pretty often. And you know, maybe they'd throw in a couple of jokes around the town or voice lines or cutscenes that set up a funny story. No, nothing. This is just a Simpsons themed pro skater with worse controls and nothing else to contribute. The graphics though, through an emulator, aren't completely awful, but without all this upscaling, this is what the game looked like. And with all of that said, it makes perfect sense why this game got the critical grilling that it did.
You look amazing.
Thank you.
Can you even see out of that?
We'll be fine.
But this terrible piece of shit game is the highest rated game on this list. It's going to get worse, considerably worse, but for now it's actually only going to get 2 points worse with Fight Club, the video game. Oh boy. Now, for those of you who haven't seen it, Fight Club at the end of the day isn't really all about fighting. It's much more so an exploration of masculinity, social standards, a bunch of interesting stuff. But I guess somewhere along the way that got lost in translation because 5 years later, we got Fight Club, the video game, releasing in 2004. And you guessed it, it's a fighting game. All those cool ideas, neat concepts, don't need them. And look, not to toot my own horn here, but I'm a pretty expert fighting game player. I've been playing Tekken for over 5 years and I still suck. So clearly, I'm qualified to speak on this, and I have to say, without a doubt, this is one of the worst fighting games I've ever played. But it's probably not the worst one, we'll get to that later. This game is the definition of a turd with chocolate sauce because from the outside, the game looks really damn good for 2004. They got the likeness for all the major characters, the moves are well animated, this looks good. But then, the first red flag appeared. For some reason, there isn't a move list, or a set of combos, or anything. But then after mashing some buttons praying I find something interesting, I realized there isn't a move list because you don't need a move list. There are, I shit you not, 5 moves shared amongst all the characters in the game. This isn't a Street Fighter system where everyone has a unique light, medium, and heavy punch and kick. There's just a shared pool of animations that everyone gets. And then on closer inspection, who the fuck are these characters? Alright, we got some named characters like Angel Face, but who the fuck is Mechanic? This dude with 20 seconds of screen time? Why is he here? Was this the best option we had, guys? Seriously? But as per usual with all movie tie-in games, unfortunately the story is just a PowerPoint presentation taking an originally fun concept and making it absolutely unbearable. My favorite part being when the game proceeds to tell me that I need to break someone's arm and then also just doesn't tell me how to do it. Don't you just love that? And in potentially my favorite twist, for some reason they got everything animated, but I guess they just forgot to do anything with the sound design? Almost all of the sound effects, music, everything is just missing. Did the budget just run out? Did the files get corrupted or something? What happened with this? Even if everything got corrupted or something, you couldn't have just like made a phone call, asked them to like come in and re-record, or fuck, just gotten a mic and like done your best impression? But the funniest part of all of this to me is that someone at a publishing company had to look at this and go, yep, that's exactly what we want. Release that shit. But you know, maybe the budget for this game actually wasn't that low at all. Maybe it all just went to one place. Fighting games in the 2000s thrived on guest characters. Master Chief, Yoda, Spawn, Link. This is part of what sold games at the time, and it makes perfect sense that this game would pull together a great cast of guest characters. You know, it was 2004, maybe they pulled someone together like Beatrix Kiddo, she seems like she has some demons to fight. Maybe Maximus from Gladiator, that'd be pretty cool. You know, those might just be my guesses, but surely they at least got someone cool. But you know what, let's just see who they got, alright? Drumroll please. Abe Lincoln and Fred Durst? Yeah, no, that was what I was thinking too. That was my third guess, actually. Now, for those of you who have decent taste in music, Fred Durst was the lead singer of Limp Bizkit and one of the single worst parts of the early 2000s.
I'd love to get my hands on that cock, that huge cock.
But for some reason, Fred Durst made it his personal mission to show up in any game that licensed Limp Bizkit's music, and that included this one, so Fred Durst is just a character. He doesn't have any voice lines or anything, and he's just a reskin, but, you know, I guess that's cool. I certainly don't mind seeing someone beat the ever-living fuck out of him, which ironically isn't even the closest he's ever come to dying. But I mean, Abe Lincoln? Can any game just, like, add him as a character? Is that, like, allowed? Really? Remember that classic Fight Club scene where Abe Lincoln beats the shit out of someone? Because I don't. Is there any lore reason why Abe Lincoln is here? Does he have some demons to fight? What's going on? Imagine going to Fight Club for your first day and your fucking opponent is Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president of the United States, dude who made the Emancipation Proclamation.
Day in and day out, he trains. He trains for the rematch against that man.
And, wow. Still working on processing the fact that Abe Lincoln is in a fucking fighting game. This game released in November 16th of 2004. But you know, I can name another game that released in November of 2004. Arguably the greatest 3D fighter of all time, Tekken 5 released the day before this dropped. This isn't actually the worst fighting game ever, but it released in an era where fighting games were arguably at their peak. Tekken 5, Soul Calibur 2, Street Fighter Alpha 3, all released in this singular era of gaming. If you wanted to make a fighting game in this period, it had to be absolutely elite, and this definitely was not. But you know, I have a question for you that might be a bit of a non sequitur. Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I really hate Osama bin Laden? Well, do I have the fucking game for you? This is Fugitive Hunter, a game about capturing the CIA's top wanted suspects, including Osama bin Laden himself. But what's interesting about this is that this released 8 years before he died, meaning there's a non-zero chance that he might have played this, especially considering that Osama bin Laden was a gamer. Osama bin Laden reportedly had a copy of Counter-Strike Source, meaning if you were queuing this up in late 2008, there's a chance you were in a game with bin Laden himself, which would also mean that he had a Steam page, theoretically, but we're getting distracted here. In this game, though, bin Laden's not munching on Doritos like you or I, he's throwing hands. So this game follows an unnamed agent who targets criminals in an attempt to dismantle a criminal organization, leading all the way up to bin Laden himself. The gameplay itself is basically just an unplayable Doom clone, but before I show you too much of the gameplay, let me just show you a commercial they ran to advertise the game, because if they can't sell you on the game, I don't know who can.
Ties and capture rising. Where's Abdullah? He's been hiding, hijacking straight surprises, flying down, blowing up high rises. 500 soldiers in disguises. Hope I can make it out with my life as Fugitive Hunter. I get paid, I get killed. Fugitive Hunter. Fugitive Hunter.
Possessed for the quest, bulletproof vest, shot to the chest, arrest, only the blessed, stress the mess until it's time to leave the nest. All in your own in a new song, watch jump skills, sprinkle like the dome, who must it be? Lay my path, spiritual being, lead to the circle of a roller ring, they blink, here, take a drink, sink it to the clink of the clan, blind from the map, can't see the hand, fingers on live, got to move down, never let a wimp, stroking in the pimp in the middle of this fugitive style.
Yes, that was real. With a score of 35 out of 100, this game was described as a short game with bland mechanics, repetitive levels, and almost zero replay value. But the best part is that this game wasn't designed to be intentionally funny, but has some of the most hilarious moments I've ever seen in a game. FPS games on old consoles tended to be terrible. It wasn't until the PS3 era where they really started to get the vertical and horizontal sensitivity of the games down. Here, aiming is almost impossible. The strategy I thought up to make up for how awful the aiming is was just to keep my crosshair in a good spot and use movement to line up with the targets, or just let them walk straight into it. And to be fair to the game, the one thing that is super fluid is the movement. But while the movement may be fluid, the problem is everything else in the game is not. For some reason, anytime we encounter a suspect, instead of them shooting us or us shooting them, for some reason we both decide to just throw hands. And I don't know why, but 3D fighters at the time just couldn't seem to figure out how to make a real video game. The enemies just swing at thin air doing full combos with almost no opportunities to punish, and the meta of the game is to just mash out button combinations which are ridiculously effective. And above all of that, there's just blatant police brutality repeatedly against against literally everyone. Now, I did a little bit of digging into this game because surely this had to be satire, right? But from everything I could find, this was 100% for real. This was made by a studio by the name of Black Ops Entertainment, and considering they've never said otherwise, I'm inclined to believe that this was supposed to be a completely serious game about some random white dude fanfiction character hunting down these people. And I just feel obligated to say it again. Osama bin Laden is a boss battle in this game, leading to one of the most surreal things I think you'll ever see, Osama bin fighting. But as per usual, you can just mash and take down the terrorist leader, Osama bin Fallen. This is definitely one of the most overhated games on this entire list. I played this to completion and I have no regrets because it is absolutely hilarious. This game is definitely not a 37. The gameplay isn't nearly as abhorrent. And to be honest, this was the most fun I had in this entire video compared to any other game on here. So I'm gonna give it some slack and my personal seal of approval, if only for the Osama bin Laden boss fight. Absolutely incredible title. Look, we've gone through some bad games, but those games were just boring bad. Those games were a snooze fest compared to our next title, clocking in a score of 35 out of 100, Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, PS2. Now, interestingly, this has led to a bit of an existential crisis for me, and the only thing to this day I've ever had the Mandela effect for. Did you know that the original film Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is in fact not called that at all? Despite the fact that the original book is called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and the movie after is called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and the fact that the name just makes so much more fucking sense, the original movie is actually called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which just blew my fucking mind. I could have sworn. So naturally, based on the title, this is an adaptation of the 2005 version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And oh my god, this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I love in a bad video game. A full attempt to make a platformer style video game, copy and pasted mechanics from other games, shitty voice acting. It's literally got it all. You know a game is about to blow your fucking mind when literally the only option in the entire settings menu is autosave. But let's just see what the game has in store for us.
The world. I, Willy Wonka, have decided to allow 5 children to visit my factory.
There stood Willy Wonka himself.
Alright, I'm gonna stop you right there. That is not Willy Wonka. I have seen Willy Wonka many times. That's not him. That is a random man you pulled off the street. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the game, plays out in a very similar way to the movie. Charlie's a broke kid. He needs money for a chocolate bar to essentially gamble for a ticket. Fate intervenes and we get ourselves a story. And here we need to chase down a $10 bill for our tutorial. After a quick Google search, apparently a tenner back in 1920 was worth 157 bucks. So to be fair, I think I'd be chasing that shit down too. What the fuck is that run animation? Who runs like that? Can we get a protractor on this man's spine, please? Can we get an angle on that? So, as you might have been able to deduce, this is a 3D platformer, but not the good kind. And to be honest, this game made me bust out laughing on more than one occasion. Like, what is that animation? Why does he look like that? Why does he grunt like a 70-year-old man when he jumps? Is Charlie comedically small? Or is the dollar bill fucking massive? Were these animations mocapped? And if so, how do you direct someone to contort their body like this? There's so many questions I have about this game. And then out of nowhere, the game decides to hit you with like a vehicle level in the form of sledding on a trash can lid through the streets of town, which, you know what, I'll give it to it. It's actually pretty fun. But as you know with the story, we get our hands on the dollar bill and we buy ourselves a chocolate bar.
But more than that, he felt terribly hungry. $10 was enough to feed his entire family for a week. So after careful consideration, Charlie decided to spend just $1 of it on himself.
1 Wonka Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Banner Delight, please.
Hungrily.
What is that picture? That is horrifying. There is no life in those eyes. That is a corpse. Why are his ears practically on his fucking jaw? Have you ever seen a human before? Why are his eye sockets big enough to prop a phone up onto? Again, have you seen a human being before? Charlie is a monstrosity. That is terrifying. Now, jokes aside, this movie is actually a source of a little bit of childhood trauma from me. That one scene where the kid gets stuck in the chocolate tube, you know what I'm talking about? That shit is like a core memory that got scarred into me as a child. I mean, come on, that shit is horrifying. It's like some shit Jigsaw would come up with. And let's be honest, Willy Wonka doesn't look like someone who's allowed within 100 feet of a school building. This game, by comparison, though, takes almost all of the air out of the situation. I mean, do I Do I need to explain this? So the actual levels for this game is unfortunately what earned it the score of 35 out of 100. These are some of the most abysmally designed maps I've ever seen, and the objectives are almost schizophrenic. The game's ideas of an interesting mechanic include enlisting the help of Oompa Loompas, the helpers of the area, which, let's be honest, probably violates every kind of labor law in existence. The Oompa Loompas can be called on to follow you and do your bidding, which mainly includes forcing them into physical labor. The next game objective, though, still has me puzzled to this day. So for whatever reason, we get a throwable piece of candy that we need to use to hit the trees in the area in hoping of finding and eating Wonkavite, some kind of living entity that gets hunted for some reason. To be honest, it's not really explained, but the game expects you to go to every single plant in the map and just check to see if there's anything in there until you've found all of them. And it's here where unfortunately the game's budget seemingly ran out. I was going to keep playing this game until I beat it, but then when I saw level 2, I quickly noticed that it was almost identical to level 1. And after a quick Google search, I realized that the game just uses the same mechanics over and over. So yeah, I think I might pass on this one. But you know, speaking about all this nostalgia and childhood trauma and stuff, it gets me thinking about the first games I ever played. Super Mario on the NES, Super Mario 2 on the NES, Super Mario 3 on the NES, and of course when I would occasionally go to arcades, Frogger. But would you be surprised to know that Frogger has sequels? Frogger released in 1981 to huge success, becoming one of the most recognizable and referenced games in pop culture. But to the surprise of most, there's actually a ton of Frogger games out there. There's a Frogger 2 that released in 1984 that flopped so hard they released another game called Frogger 2 and hoped no one would notice. And unfortunately, Frogger fell into a fate worse than death, being owned by Konami. Konami saw Frogger, a faceless, emotionless 2D sprite, and said, yep, that's our main character. I mean, look, I'm a general frog enthusiast, alright? I mean, that's my branding after all. But the reason I chose them, I think, might have differed from Konami a little bit. Now, frogs in general, just don't have much going on upstairs. Like, when you look at a cat or a dog, you might think that somehow, in some weird, simplified way, they have thoughts. No one has ever thought that about frogs. Anyone except Konami, apparently, who decided that this should be the mascot for a 3D platforming series, making a game in the early 2000s called Frogger: The Great Quest, one of the worst 3D platformers of all time.
How y'all Frogger? Okay, I guess. This can't be the only jambalaya being served, Lumpy.
I'm just gonna pause it here because it has been 10 seconds and I'm already very confused. Like, please, just listen to this.
How y'all Frogger?
What is he saying? It sounds like someone is saying hello, Frogger, but then he responds with, I'm okay, I guess, which means somehow this was in relation to how are you? And then he proceeds to continue and say, this ain't the only jumbo I being served, Lumpy. Does anyone understand any of that? Now, I'm assuming this is some sort of Creole being spoken to some degree, but you couldn't have, like, maybe put some subtitles here for the rest of the normal population of the world? Somehow you have completely lost me, and we are 3 lines of dialogue in.
Come out, wherever you are, you little slime bucket.
What's the matter, you chicken?
No, Hemo. He just tastes like one.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hold on to your hose end, boys. What have we here?
Get him!
Oh yeah!
So there's a lot to process here. Now, I'm not entirely sure if in this world there are extremely small frogs or conversely giant fucking mosquitoes. I'm not sure which would be stranger. Frogger's Great Quest revolves around Frogger wanting to turn into a human prince, and thus being forced to find a princess to force her to kiss him. His plan's actually really weird now that I'm saying this out loud, but essentially we have to make our way through the bayou leading to the gameplay. And yikes, this is hideous. Again, for some reason, there's an amazingly goofy run animation to behold, but graphically, this is awful. And 2001 was a year that had some of the greatest games of all time. Halo Combat Evolved, Silent Hill 2, and in terms of 3D platformers, this game released 15 days before Jak and Daxter, a game that smokes this one in every conceivable category. Frogger: The Great Quest is some of the most boring, terribly paced platforming I think ever made. In Banjo-Kazooie style, there's a ton of coin-like items scattered throughout the map, but where that game allows you to revisit locations and use it for for completion, here they do no such thing. The gemstones and optional platforming challenges do nothing. The only objective is just to push forward aimlessly, and that's still boring. The combat is abysmal, the level design is practically empty. I mean, for God's sake, there's a waterfall here without a hidden cave behind it. I'm pretty sure that's illegal in a collectathon. The render distance is actually like maybe 20 feet. It might actually be a contender for the worst Banjo-Kazooie clone of all time. I have no idea what Konami was thinking when they decided to take a blank, emotionless frog sprite and turn it into a young, aggressively southern protagonist. I just don't. And so it makes perfect sense why this game flopped, right? Except it somehow didn't. It managed to sell 1.2 million copies, officially beating Silent Hill 2, a game that is immeasurably better. Unfortunately, many of the games we're going to find on this list actually had pretty decent sales, and that's because at this point in time, licensed video games had not been accepted as universally trash as they are now, and as a result, a bunch of companies made a bunch of shovelware games that we're going to see today. Now, some of the brands do make sense, like The Simpsons, but others will just leave you confused, scratching your head like, who decided to pitch this? And more importantly, who approved it? Was someone being blackmailed? How did this get made? And no game has made me more confused than MTV Deathmatch. MTV, Music Television, the TV channel that gained popularity by airing music videos all the time, eventually decided to shift out of it and do television stuff. Almost like that defeats the entire point. But all of this culminated somehow in a 3D fighter with a bunch of celebrity caricatures, where with Fight Club I said that it definitely wasn't the worst fighting game I'd ever played. This definitely is. You know a game is going to be absolutely great when your character roster varies from Mr. T to Marilyn Manson and 3 separate people who appeared in the Playboy magazine. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, man, this is a completely schizophrenic concept. And you'd be right. You'd be right in thinking that. But believe it or not, this game is actually based on a TV show of the exact same name. MTV Celebrity Deathmatch was actually a claymation animation series that aired on MTV, showcasing random fights, and it is some of the worst media you will ever consume. Someone watched this and said, yup, that's what we need to make into a game. This right here. So, of course, being in the Big 24, I doubt really anyone knows half the people in this game anymore. Of course, we have our classics that everyone knows, like Carrot Top and Ron Jeremy, the literal porn star. But there are a few people that are cool to see. Busta Rhymes, Jeremy Springer, Tommy Lee, and I can't escape him. No matter where I go, his shitty music follows me for eternity. Seriously, how did this man appear in every shitty piece of content on the planet? Did he even check the stuff he was putting himself into? And look, not that I have any expectations left, but you'd think at some point they'd at least just decide to make the game fun, bad, and super goofy. But let me just show you what the game is like. This game has no music. None. It's just total silence, intermittently broken up by sound effects and the announcer saying some weird sexual comments. Okay, but why is the red thread for all of these games just weird people and celebrities fighting? Osama bin Laden, Abe Lincoln, a sexual predator, Fred Durst?
Yo, what's up, bro?
Oh, what's up, dude? I'm just playing my favorite game right now. Michelle Obama versus Genghis Khan. But to be honest, all of these fighting games have me just a little bit bored. And you know, I'm thinking maybe it's time we spice things up ever so slightly. In this entire list, we haven't had a single game yet that features a gun. And thankfully, our next game brings the action. Coming in with our third score of 32 out of 100, The Trigger Man. Dramatic title, I like it. The Trigger Man follows a hitman for the Mafia in a sort of pseudo-action stealth game. What could go wrong? Many things. But you know what, let's just give the opening a fair shake and get truly immersed in the world of the Trigger Man. Yes, immersive cutscenes. Gotta love the still frame approach to storytelling. This is essentially just a silent film at this point. But you know what, I'll just add some voice acting here.
Thanks yous for coming on such short notice. You should have heard by now that the Montejano family is moving against us. They blame us for the death of Tony Montejano. That idiot. I didn't kill him. His own greed killed him. But the Montejanos, they won't listen. They don't want to face the truth.
I'm always available to the Carlo D'Angelo family. What would you ask of me, Don Carlo D'Angelo?
Convince them that it would be beneficial if they apologized for their slanderous remarks and reconsidered this wasteful vendetta.
The New York accent is a scourge on this planet. So finally into the gameplay, Trigger Man is a third-person shooter that takes place in a casino. And to the surprise of absolutely fucking no one, it fucking sucks. Typical to the Hitman concept, you have a silenced pistol. But to be completely honest with you, I'm not convinced anyone on the development team had a fucking clue as to how guns work. Headshots kill in one shot. Good. Nicely done. But for some reason, nailing someone in the body might as well count as a missed shot. Now, generally, unless you're using a 22, a shot to the chest will generally kill you. So either this Hitman is running a 22 caliber pistol, or the game sucks. I'll let you decide on that one. So why does this matter, right? It matters because in a game like this, with a crosshair like this, it is a miracle I hit even half the shots that I did. Weirdly enough, I'm struggling to find the words to say to this game. It's exactly what you see. It's not like Celebrity Deathmatch or Fight Club where it's a blatantly dogshit thrown together mess that was just a cash grab using a cool IP. This is just a forgettable game, nothing more to say. Well, I mean, there is another issue that I did forget to mention. I said earlier that this game took place in a casino, which is technically true, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that this game does have missions outside of the casino, but I never got to see them because the second you fail a mission, the game just instantly shits itself and crashes. Cool. You know, cool mechanic. No, I like it. This is a bad game that I don't like. Some of the bad games on here to me are absolutely hilarious, but this is a game that I had to repeatedly remind myself that I even played. But you know, I'm starting to really get the itch for something truly dogshit. And our next game doesn't disappoint. For our first game on this list with a score below 30 out of 100, we have Crazy Frog Racing. So, remember the genuine cancer that was Crazy Frog? A soundbite designed to be as damaging to the human ear canal as possible? That's what we decided to make into a racing game. We had all the other options. That's what we chose. This game is a painful experience. That's the best way I can describe it to you. Do you suffer from motion sickness? Well, I really hope not, because playing this game might actually kill you. In most racing games, they usually put a hard cap on how quickly you can turn at extremely high speeds. Much like how in real life, there's a limit on how fast you can realistically turn at extremely high speeds. Well, unfortunately, the day this game was made, the developers must have had some sort of carbon monoxide leak in the office, and as a result, tapping left to right is one of the most nauseating experiences I've ever had in gaming. Who decided to make this into a game, and how did it make it past quality assurance? Was there a quality assurance team? And how did this game manage to get a sequel? You know when Nietzsche said that whole like God is dead thing and we killed him? I think this was like specifically what he was referring to. Please don't play this game. But you know, as a white man, there's very few things in this world that I enjoy quite as much as cultural appropriation, especially when it comes to Western companies using other cultures to make a bunch of money. Are you immersed right now? Cause I am. You know, let me just really go back through this real quick and dissect it. You know, let's use these media literacy skills. We have a guy who's training, I'm not really sure why, it never gets explained. And then again, I don't really know why, but his master, assumedly, and someone who quite frankly resembles a Neanderthal or Cro-Magnon or maybe even a Homo erectus, comes out of nowhere and just throws a shit ton of shurikens at the poor guy. I mean, how can you not just be sucked into this world? So when evaluating these games, I think we all fundamentally get that a 27 out of 100 means that the game is gonna be shit, but this game is something special. I mean, just look at this combat, I mean, doesn't this look fun to you? But my absolute favorite part is how some of the game's cutscenes are just like blatantly racist.
Your questions here.
So something that you'll probably notice is that for some reason the characters will speak random Japanese words at the level of like maybe a kindergartner. And then of course randomly cut back to English.
Your questions here.
But then, this happens.
What the? I sense our element is weak in you.
Something you'll come to learn after playing enough shitty games is that when you see a slow, painful camera pan onto the enemies, you are in for a terrible experience. But I'm sorry, everyone here can just extend their knee and glide? I mean, how many other stereotypical Asian tropes are we gonna throw in here? I feel like we're one step away from gongs being common sound effects here.
Ah, fresh meat!
Masterful sound design, truly, just wonderful. Surely this wouldn't be the type of game to also put stereotypically Asian food as healing items scattered around the map, right? You guys wouldn't do that, right? Oh, they did it. Oh. Alright guys, at this point you might as well make this the game's soundtrack. So to be entirely honest, I'm not sure if that's like offensive in a modern setting. So I decided to look it up and figure out exactly what that riff comes from. And its history is fucking fascinating. That little soundbite isn't Asian music like at all. That was made by a random American dude in the late 1800s. And what he was making it for is even more interesting. This little soundbite was written for the original play of Aladdin. And you might be thinking, isn't that riff like traditionally Asian or at least associated with it? And yes, it is. The original story of Aladdin does not take place in Arabia. It takes place in China, and it's exclusively because of Disney that we think otherwise. But now on this list, our final game with a score above a 20 out of 100, Charlie's Angels PS2. Now, for those of you who have no idea what this is, congratulations, you're probably a functioning member of society. Charlie's Angels was a franchise from the 70s about a group of 3 crime-fighting women, all of which worked for a dude named Charlie. Holy shit, that name makes sense. But of course, the appeal of the show is that all of the angels are just conventionally attractive women. However, in the year 2000, the franchise received a reboot in the form of a movie, which actually seemed to get pretty decent reviews. But unfortunately for me, that's not what we're here for. We're here for the game that was a tie-in for this. And whatever you're expecting, it's somehow worse. Again with the run animations, how exactly does someone get a character to move like this? I understand a lot of things are mocapped, but if so, like how did you get someone to look like that? But on the other hand, if these were all animated and keyframed, how did you do this? I feel like at this point it's more impressive at how bad they get it rather than just like a decent one. But anyway, this game sort of resembles Ocean's 11, and how you're essentially playing out all the simultaneous actions of 3 members to achieve a bigger overall mission, which sounds kinda cool. But the way it's structured, it just feels like a collection of short, disconnected enemy encounters since there's no variety in how you approach each situation, no way to sneak by enemies or kill them with environmental hazards, you just have to mash the attack buttons until all the enemies die and progress into the next area, where you will most likely end up doing the exact same thing. And this is the depressing thing. There's nothing funny or interesting about this game. It's everything I just described over and over again. While you poorly followed the events of the movie, but of course, while this is dog shit, it's going to get worse. And what could possibly be next? Oh, yeah, great. A fucking driving game. If you've seen my video on the Wii games, you know that these are all shit and they never end well, ever. Coming in with a score of 15 out of 100, London Taxi Rush Hour. Alright, let's just boot it up then. No. Data Design Interactive? The Data Design Interactive? Why am I not surprised they managed to make an appearance here somehow? For those of you who don't know, Data Design Interactive, or DDI for short, was a company that specialized in making shovelware games, accomplishing an absolutely astonishing feat of having 4 of the lowest rated Wii games of all time. So naturally, it seems they tried their hand at the PS2, and in spectacular fashion. Data Design Interactive are the kings at taking a singular concept or gameplay loop and making an entire game using it, and so the gimmick that was selected for this game was Crazy Taxi. This is just Crazy Taxi, but instead of driving on the right side of the road, you drive on the left. Damn. Now, Crazy Taxi on its own is a pretty mediocre game. I mean, I have nostalgia for it, but there's only so many times you can just drive around. But at least in that game, there are cool things like animations of people getting into your car as opposed to them just teleporting in and giving you a text prompt. And also, this game has no variety in music at all. For the 20 minutes you're going to be playing it, you're going to be listening to a 1-minute loop of a song. At least in the Crazy Taxi games, they license music from The Offspring, but for London Taxi, it is homebrew, royalty-free dog shit. Now, look, to be honest, I don't really know what the hell to say about this game. It's bad, but far from hilarious or even semi-fun to play. But I think I'm fed up with Data Design Interactive. I think I've had enough. Not only did they torment me in that Wii video, but now they've followed me here? But what are they up to today? Well, a quick Google search would tell you nothing, that the company went defunct in 2012. However, I don't buy that. I think it's high time that I do some digging, and I found something alright. But first, to defeat your enemies, you must know them. So I think a history lesson is in store. Data Design Interactive got their start all the way back in 1990 with Wheel of Fortune for the Game Boy. Yes, the actual Wheel of Fortune. How they accomplished this, I don't really know. But from what I learned, they didn't seem to be the only company working on this. But somehow, just a year later, they managed to get another huge contract with Jeopardy for the Game Boy. So this company somehow started off with no portfolio, nothing, and somehow ends up with Wheel of Fortune and fucking Jeopardy? You're telling me they're handing over the rights to make a game based on nothing? Now look, I'm not throwing out any accusations, like maybe a little nepotism here, blackmail there, but like, come on, seriously? But then, of course, our beautiful DDI showed their true colors at last, releasing 4 separate Jeopardy video games in a 5-year span. And you guessed it, they're all practically the same and were definitely made within about 24 hours each. But then, of course, they finally became the company we all know and love, releasing 28 games for the Wii in a 3-year span, averaging just over 9 games a year. Do you understand how crazy that is? But then, after receiving some serious backlash for what is kind of a scam, DDI seemingly quit. When no one needed them most, they vanished. But what if I told you they didn't? And somehow, someway, they're still up to the same old bullshit. DDI in 2010 released a game called Junior League Sports. It's basically just like all the sports games from Mario, except they don't work. The graphics suck and the AI cheat, making it blatantly impossible to score on multiple occasions. But then, somehow, in 2019, it came back. Magically, this game somehow got ported to the Nintendo Switch. But who would do such a thing? Who would think that this is good enough to port in the first place? Well, I found out. The port of Junior League Sports was carried out by a company known as Carnival Games LLC, with their only projects on hand being ports of DDI games. And coincidentally, the man named as CEO is none other than Stuart Green, who just so happens to be the former CEO of Data Design Interactive, the man behind all the shovelware games. But what is Carnival Games LLC? Is it just a front, a way to re-release the titles and make more money from already existing games? But then, if you look at the credits for their only other listed game, Crazy Mini Golf 2, DDI isn't the only company listed. The other company listed is Planet Entertainment. And Planet Entertainment has its fair share of controversies. Planet Entertainment was caught in a massive scandal surrounding one of their games in 2020. One of their games, called Cooking Mama Cookstar, was allegedly launched with a nasty little surprise built in. A crypto miner that would take advantage of the game's low resources and just mine free crypto, swiping them free money while you play. Allegedly. Now, Planet Games entirely denied the allegations, but conveniently due to licensing issues, the game was quickly removed from public stores. Now, as juicy as that drama is, whether it's true or not, the point is, these are the people that DDI are somehow associating with, and also somehow DDI is still trying to make a profit, meaning while the name DDI may not be used, the mastermind is still working. Well, now for one of my favorite games on this list. Coming in with a score of 15 out of 100, we have Robin Hood's Quest. Releasing in 2007, the same year that the PS3 launched, this is regarded as one of the worst games ever made. But let's give it a chance. So our story begins with a 2.5-minute cutscene of just a scrolling wall of text. I mean, alright, fair enough. Little exposition couldn't kill anyone.
More than once upon a time, a brave man has traversed hill and dale, river and valley, forest and fortress, to rescue his beloved.
I hate to interrupt you here in, the first minute, but already you failed. Somehow you have miserably failed at syncing the words being spoken to the text on screen. But you know what? I'm not really here for the story, damn it. I'm here for the gameplay. Why is it that all of these games have these goofy-ass run animations? We're starting to make James from Silent Hill 2 look like Usain Bolt. So this game seems to have a few missions for 1 or 2 NPCs standing around, and what might these missions be? Well, stealth missions, with the goal of sneaking around a guard and stealing a treasure back. Alright, you know what? I think I can just run around these guards. Let's see what they do. Okay, that was a lot to process. Again with the run animation, but who laughs like that? So as you can see from the UI, there's a collection of keys we need to get our hands on to beat the level. The keys can all be found in chests hidden around the level, with guards patrolling each one. But once we get our hands on all 3 of them, we can finally sneak out of the level and proceed on to the next one. The same thing. And on top of that, the game crashed. So I'm just going to take that as a sign from a higher power to find something better to do with my time. Coming in with a score of 10 out of 100, we have Cinderella. Now, with a score of 10 out of 100, you have to assume that this is on here for a very good reason. My expectations were low, but this game made me feel gross. And not because it was that bad, to be honest, but because it just kind of feels immoral to really even play. This is a kid's game, and not in the same way that Mario is a kid's game, but in the same way that My Little Pony is a TV show. If you're a kid watching it, that's great, but if you're above the age of 18 and watching it, you should be monitored very closely. This is a game where you solve a puzzle and get a piece of the Cinderella story retold in a semi-modern setting, and it's pretty fucking cursed. But my question is, why is this rated at 10 out of 100? 1 out of 10? This is a kid's game, and I have to imagine for a kid this isn't really that bad. Did a grown man truly play through this game and evaluate everything he saw and said, yeah, that was a 1 out of 10? Did a, and I really have to emphasize it again, grown-ass man really sit down and play this with all of his critical skills and think, yep, it's a 10 out of 100. But if you couldn't tell, I'm kind of uncomfortable here. I'd like to move on. With our second game of 10 out of 100, we have the worst shooter of all time, Beverly Hills Cop. Now, unfortunately, this isn't the Beverly Hills Cop that you're thinking of. Eddie Murphy's not running around putting bananas in tailpipes, which is strangely kind of the only thing I know about that movie for whatever reason. This Beverly Hills Cop game couldn't even get the rights to Eddie Murphy's likeness. This is a licensed game that couldn't pay for the likeness of the main character, which, great start. And what the fuck is this loading screen? I have so many questions. Who is he? Why is he here? Why is he making that face? Why is he doing that with his hand? Why are 3 of his fingers the same length? Now that I'm looking at it, his hand is all kinds of fucked up. He's out here looking like some kind of AI-generated skinhead. Alright, mission 1, the chop shop. Sneak into the garage, look for evidence, stay out of sight. Easy, simple, I got this. Oh, sick, we got a cutscene. Okay, so we're being shown the objective, alright, little overly explanative, but you know, let's run this shit. Boom, destroyed. This doesn't seem to be really that bad at all. This might actually end up being kind of fun, actually. Okay, how did this man survive a 9mm shot to the skull? And also, what the fuck is this death screen? You just slowly crossfade to this? Really? That was the best thing you cooked up? Okay, you know what? It's fine, actually. Let's just go ahead and do this again. I think I'll just sneak by this time and, oh. This again. Can I skip it? No, I cannot. Okay. Just the 40-second unskippable cutscene. It's cool. It's cool. So after solid snaking my way over to the ladder, I climbed up and this finally happened. What exactly did I do wrong? Can you please just like precisely tell me what my mistake was here? You know, it was probably just a bug or something, to be completely honest with you. Let's just try again. Clean slate, open mind. Oh, okay, that's right. You know, I have better shit to do. Now, unskippable cutscenes hold a very special place in my heart. A place in my heart that I only keep for PTSD. I will never, ever forgive the person who decided to make this Kingdom Hearts 1 cutscene unskippable. I will never forgive you for that. I probably saw that cutscene hundreds of times. But now that 3 business days have passed, I guess I can play again. Let's just try this again, okay? Water under the bridge. Okay, we're back up here, right? This looks tricky. I think maybe one of the people downstairs might have seen me last time or so. I didn't realize this was a fucking horror game. Just put this guy out of his misery. I'm sorry, did I just see that right? Oh, but that worked. Okay, but that works. No, I get it now. I see the error of my ways. This is some actual fucking bullshit, which, I mean, I guess to be fair I signed up for, but still. But somehow, that game isn't even the worst thing on this list. Can you believe that? Can you believe that there is truly something worse than that on this list? The record low score for games I cover on this channel has been an 8 out of 100, and that of course went to Action Girls Racing on the Wii. But finally, I found a game that can rival it. Coming in with another score of 8 out of 100, Little Britain, the video game. Now, before I decide to show you what the game itself is like, why don't I just read you a review first? Absolutely appalling. The game's badly animated, graphically poor, and should shame all who made it and all who buy it. Pray for an end to cash and greed and weep the death of quality. There shall now be a paragraph silence. 1 out of 10. Now, if somehow that doesn't have you interested, you might just be stupid, because to me that sounds incredible. Now, this game was doomed from the start. Not only are all the characters British, but it's based on painfully unfunny source material. Little Britain was a series of comedy sketches in Britain that just make fun of British culture as a whole, but to me, what they consider to be funny has an astonishingly low bar. Extremely overweight people speaking in total nonsense, people pretending to have a disability. Man, just fucking hilarious. And unfortunately for us, someone decided to adapt this into a video game consisting of 7 minigames. But just to show you how great of a start we're off to, let's just take a look at the cover. 8 action-packed minigames? Really? Really? That's right. There is blatant false advertising on the cover of this game. But what could have possibly warranted a score of 8 out of 100? The lowest score I've personally seen. Well, it's the minigames. But again, instead of telling you about it, I think I'll just show you one.
But yeah, but goo. Oh my god, I still can't believe I just done that.
The fact that this is legal to show in a video game is shocking to me. So not only do you have to stare at this for several minutes at a time, but you're also forced to listen to this cancerous loop of music for 6 minutes straight. And even better, the game just never tells you how to win at all. Is my goal like these little collectibles? Is it the high score? Is it to do tricks? I don't know. Is it to beat the laps? Now, if you guessed that it was the high score option, you'd be right. Basically, the game only progresses once you hit a high enough score, meaning sometimes you have to replay these levels, and once you get a big enough high score, what are you rewarded with? Well, not only do you unlock the next level, but you get a 240p 30-second clip from the show that has absolutely nothing to do with what we just did. The next and arguably worst minigame of them all is the diving game, a game where you need to mash X until you get to a diving board and then attempt to roughly do the tricks the game shows you on the loading screen, which never ever work. But then out of nowhere the game just runs out of ideas and just starts stealing shit from other games. We have literally just Pac-Man, like that's it. A game of whack-a-mole with real live frogs, like what the fuck. A game of soccer, and a game of Tetris that determines how much vomit you have to throw up on people. Which, you know, relatable. Been there a time or two. And then a final game about running over and kicking gay people? Was this really okay in the 2000s? I mean, just look at the cover. I'm the only gay in this village? Seriously? Is that like a British thing? Hating and kicking gay people? Running them over? Is this normal there? I mean, can you imagine some random gay guy whose sole intention is to just run over and kick other gay people? What a menace. I mean, in this situation, you know, I'd be perfectly safe, right? I wouldn't I wouldn't be in danger at all. But I mean, could you imagine? Well, thank you so much for watching this video. It has been an absolute blast to make, as miserable as it was at certain points. As you can tell, I'm kind of in a bit of an awkward stage with my hair. So obviously, if you've been around the channel long enough, you've noticed that there've been some pretty big changes in the backdrop recently, and that's because I moved. I got myself an office. Obviously, I don't own it, I just rent it. But this is just kind of where I make my content now. I'm hoping I'm putting up some cool footage of it on screen. Now, this office has kind of been what's consumed all of my time for the past 3 months, probably. The amount of work I had to do, like, just on this wall here is absolutely ridiculous, but it was so worth it. And I really hope you like how it looks just as much as I do. It's kind of a shame that all of those posters on the back just don't show up, because that was kind of like the centerpiece I was mentally picturing, but like in actuality, once I kind of got it set up, I sort of realized that it wasn't necessary and it was really hard to work into the shot. As you can tell, this was filmed literally minutes after I filmed the Abraham Lincoln bit, the final thing I needed to get done. And it's kind of starting to click that I'm just gonna look like this for a while. And even worse, the black dye has already started degrading into a light green, which is, it's just hideous, man. I hate it. And if you're enjoying the new style of content I'm making on this channel, I would seriously appreciate a like, a comment, and a sub. Well, to be honest, I think I'm gonna take a couple days off for the first time in a while. I am fucking exhausted. So I think I'm gonna wrap this video up here. So I guess cue the blooper reel. Imagine pulling up to Fight Club for the first time, and the 16th president of the United States, the dude who made the Emancipation Proclamation, is fucking your opponent. Nope, that's a different connotation, doesn't it? Planet Entertainment. Oh, Jesus!
I love the idea of you checking behind you on an elevator.
You might be back there.
Yeah.
Can you let me back in?
You should like open that up and be like, we got candy bars on this side, fake IDs on the other.
This is how I lure many children into my lair. I have candy bars that I pull out of my trench coat.